Julia loved hosting. She had a knack for setting a scene, arranging furniture with careful intention, laying out little bowls of olives as if curating a page from a European lifestyle blog. She planned, styled, and entertained, while Martin, cooked, set the table, refilled glasses, and kept everything running smoothly in the background. That had been our rhythm for 4 years of marriage. I worked in IT operations, not the flashy, high-paying kind, just the steady, essential type that kept things from crashing. Recently, I had been promoted to team lead. It wasn't a position that made headlines, but it mattered to me. More responsibility, a small raise, proof of years of effort paying off. Julia didn't seem to think much of it. The dinner party was her idea, a half-hearted celebration of my promotion, but mostly an excuse to bring together her carefully curated circle. People in PR, design, branding. The kind who spoke in polished captions, who lived through the lens of color-coordinated Instagram grids. I spent the afternoon braising short ribs, whipping up garlic mashed potatoes, roasting carrots with thyme. Not to impress, just to make sure people ate something real. By the time I carried out dessert, dark chocolate tart, just as Julia requested, the wine was flowing freely. I was halfway to the table when I heard it. He thinks a mid-level job makes him husband material. Laughter. Effortless biting. The kind of laugh that comes when a joke doesn't need explaining. Someone chimed in. At least he cooks. More laughter. I kept walking, steady and unbothered, setting down the first plate in front of Julia with a smile before moving clockwise, serving each guest in turn. No one made eye contact. I topped off a few wine glasses, asked if anyone wanted coffee, and disappeared into the kitchen. I didn't storm out, didn't argue, just stood at the sink with my own cup of coffee, waiting for the laughter to die down. When I returned, plates were empty, conversations shifting to bad dates and vacation plans, as if I hadn't just been reduced to a convenient punchline. After the last guest left, Julia closed the door and stretched, looking pleased. That was a lot of energy, but I think it went well. I just nodded. Food was great. Thanks for pulling that off, she added before heading to bed, humming, probably texting her friends about what a perfect night it had been. I stayed up. Not angry. Not hurt. Just thinking. Thinking about the rent I paid every month. The car payments I covered. The business she called her passion but had yet to sell a single thing from. The LLC I had registered for her. The bank accounts I had set up, the lease I had signed on her so-called studio space. Julia had spent months crafting an aesthetic, an image, a brand. She spoke in grand statements about building a legacy, but all she had were mood boards and compliments from friends who told her she was so brave for following her dream. She believed in the illusion she had created for herself, the version where she was a visionary entrepreneur and I was just an accessory, functional, necessary, but ultimately unimpressive. By the time I closed my laptop, I had backed up every document, every login, every receipt tied to her business. I saved them in a private folder and named it Husband Material. By Monday morning, Julia was buzzing with excitement. She had taped a vision board to the kitchen wall, paint swatches, magazine clippings of luxury interiors, a motto in gold lettering, "Make your space, make your legacy." She had no idea I had already dismantled it all. That afternoon, while she sipped an oat milk latte at some cafe, working on her vision, I drove to the studio space and met with the landlord. The lease was in my name, month to month. I handed in the cancellation notice. He barely raised an eyebrow. "She didn't seem like the paperwork type anyway," he remarked. Next stop, the bank. I closed the business account, $243 left. I transferred it back to my personal account. Legal. Clean. That evening, over dinner, she was still talking about her soft launch, oblivious to the fact that by Friday, there would be nothing left to launch. Julia was radiant that morning, brimming with excitement as she scrolled through her phone. "I think I'll post the studio preview on Thursday," she mused, tapping at the screen, already picturing the engagement it would generate. "Then maybe a tour video next week." I sipped my coffee and nodded. "Sounds like a plan." She beamed. "It's finally happening." I smiled back. "Yeah, it is." The next morning, I started packing. She hadn't moved much into the studio, just a few curated props for aesthetic appeal. A white rug she claimed was Scandinavian modern, but was really a thrift store find, a handful of faux plants, 3 candles with words like intent printed on them. The kind of things meant more for Instagram than actual use. I packed them neatly, stacking the boxes in our guest room without a word. At first, she didn't notice. The missing rug? She assumed the cleaning lady had moved it. The studio keys weren't where she left them, but she often forgot which purse she last used. Even the candles, so carefully arranged for her pre-launch photo shoot, didn't register as missing. But then Thursday arrived. She called while I was at work. I let it go to voicemail. By lunch, there were 4 more messages, her voice growing sharper with each one. I didn't need to answer. I already knew what she was discovering in real time. The lease was canceled, the locks had been changed, the business account had been emptied and closed. Everything had been tied to me. My name, my money, my effort. That evening, she stood in the middle of our living room, her entire reality crumbling around her. Her voice was tight, panicked. She kept asking questions. Why did you do this? When did you decide? I barely responded. There was nothing left to explain. She accused me of being dramatic, of sabotaging her success. She twisted the narrative, desperately trying to paint herself as the victim, to make me the insecure husband threatened by his wife's rising star. But the words rang hollow, even to her. There's a certain kind of silence people reach when their delusions run out of space. I watched her hit it, not with tears, not with screaming, but with a vacant stare, as if someone had unplugged the world she had built and left her floating in the dark. I brought in the boxes, setting them down in front of her without a word. Every piece of that dream she had never built on her own now fit neatly into a single, uninspiring stack. She said nothing, and for once I didn't press for a conversation. That night, she posted something vague online, a quote about outgrowing people who can't handle your shine. Her followers responded with hearts and hashtags, validating her. It didn't matter. The truth doesn't need an audience to land. By the time I turned in for the night, she had already begun rewriting the story. But I had the original script, and I wasn't finished. Friday morning, she was buzzing again. She thought we were heading out for a weekend getaway, some curated experience she had found online. Rustic, expensive, effortlessly chic. She packed our matching overnight bags, the ones she bought last year when we were supposed to start traveling more. She laid out her outfit with the kind of precision usually reserved for magazine shoots. I left early that morning, just like usual. Told her I'd meet her at the car later. I never did. Instead, I drove to a short-term rental I had booked under a different name. Clean. Quiet. Furnished. A space with no history, no expectations. There was already a second set of clothes waiting for me. A phone charger. A bottle of bourbon. And the kind of silence you only learn to appreciate after too much noise. She called. Twice at first. By noon, she was texting, asking if I was stuck in traffic. By 3 p.m., the tone had changed, short, sharp, demanding. Where are you? Why are you ruining the weekend? Why are you being so petty? I didn't answer. At 5 p.m., I sent a single email. Not a text. Not a call. An email. One sentence. The man you called mid-level is finished building the life you wanted to stand on. Attached was a copy of the divorce paperwork, clean, uncontested, already filed. I had listed verbal humiliation and emotional incompatibility. Nothing dramatic. Just honest. I had also attached one last file, a saved audio recording. The smart speaker in the corner had picked up the conversation from that dinner party. The laughter. The words. The casual dismissal of me as a husband, as a man. I hadn't planned to keep it. But that night, after hearing them mock me, I had hit save. It wasn't blackmail. I never sent it to anyone else. I just wanted her to know that the truth wasn't mine alone. It existed, raw and undeniable. She called immediately. I let it ring. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel angry. I just felt quiet. That night, I placed my phone face down on the nightstand and slept better than I had in weeks. 3 days later, she showed up. I heard her before I saw her, banging on the security gate, shouting my name loud enough for the neighbors to peek from their windows. I didn't move. I stood behind the blinds, coffee in hand, watching her unravel. She wasn't angry. Not really. She was confused. Like a director watching an actor step off stage mid-scene, realizing the script no longer made sense without them. She called. And called. And called. I stopped counting after the 307th missed call. The first few messages were indignant. You're embarrassing both of us. No one will take you seriously. Then they softened. Where are you? I didn't mean it. It was just a joke. I was under pressure. My friends didn't mean it. You're overreacting. Then came the last voicemail, barely a whisper. Please come back. I didn't think you'd actually leave. But I had. I had left the moment she decided I wasn't worth standing beside in front of her friends. The paperwork was already processing. The accounts were clean. My name was no longer tied to her dreams, her debts, her dinner parties. She had spent years crafting a life that looked good from the outside. I spent one weekend making sure she couldn't lean on it anymore. Weeks later, she sent one final text. "You didn't have to be so cold." I never replied. Because that's the thing about men like me, the quiet ones. The ones mocked for not being flashy, not being loud. We don't break things when we're angry. We just leave. And we don't come back.